is we have a public hearing scheduled for April 10th. That's a Wednesday evening, 6 o'clock, downstairs in the boardroom. That's concerning the service changes and cuts we brought to you in January. I'll just refresh on those. Because of our deficit, about 1.7 million projected next year, we're looking at eliminating some of the lower productive routes, which include Route 22 along 22nd Avenue in St. Pete, 58, which runs along Bryan Dairy Road, Safety Harbor Connector, Dunedin Palm Harbor Connector, and then we'll eliminate a portion of our Route 5, which is 5th Avenue north in St. Pete. It runs right now from downtown out to Tyrone Mall. We'll probably end that at Grand Central Station. So the whole western portion of it will be removed. We will move part of the Route 9 to cover the eastern portion of that section that would be removed. And then we would remove a portion of the 16, which goes along 38th Avenue north. And we would actually change the Route 38 to pick that up. That's just moving them a little bit. Pending that, the information will come back to you for decisions at the April board meeting. And as an action item, this was just to move forward with the public hearing next month.
This is not an action item. This is
No, I mean, oh, really? It was listed as, oh, you're right, it is an information item, sorry.
Yeah.
Next month.
That's right, it would be next month. My mistake. All right. And if you think of any questions, you can get in touch, go through Brad and help out. We have been
hearings here.
Yes, in the boardroom, 6 o'clock, and we've been getting a lot of comments on this at the track meeting, through emails, and we're consolidating them all, so you'll have them.
Okay. Any questions?
All right, thank you.
Hear about transit funding then.
Maybe Debbie's report will make our cuts move. We won't have to do it. No pressure.
No pressure.
Thanks.
Well, good afternoon, Debbie Lita, CFO, and this afternoon we're going to be talking about transit funding and a little bit about what we've done to help ourselves, what we need, and the types of funding and what may be best for PSTA to serve our county. So over the last 5 years, we have been projecting shortfalls. And while Brad and team has been out in the public eye nationally for the innovations that they're doing with such things as Direct Connect, First Mile, Last Mile, staff has been working hard behind the scenes to run very efficiently. We have done quite a bit to help ourselves to save money. I made a quick list of just probably the top 20 things, but just to give you a couple ideas, we've done joint procurements where we get to save money. We have locked in prices to save money. We have been increasing our revenue generating contracts. Our maintenance department has become certified to do warranty work, so we don't have to outsource it. We've been able to keep our buses longer, increasing the life from 12 years to 15 years. We've made savings as we just finished our finance meeting. You could see in each of the action items there the savings that we have. I've even made savings a part of our procurement director's performance evaluation to really strive for doing more. We've gone after more discretionary grants. We apply for just about everything, and we've been very successful in getting several more grants. So we're looking at it not only from the expense side, but the revenue side. And we've developed additional partnerships, things like our shelter match program, where we have municipalities matching what we put in, and they help to pay for the maintenance of the shelters afterwards. And by doing so, we have created fiscal stability over the last 5 years. And we are now one of the most cost-effective public transit agencies in the country. We're actually #1. So we are on the list as #1 over here at the bottom. Unfortunately, we are also, you've seen this chart before probably, we are also the lowest funded in the country. So we want to work on that because we know from our surveys our customers want more service, they want more frequency, they want more evening service, more weekend service. And as Bob was just talking about on public hearings for cutting service, I don't think any one of us wants to cut the service. What we'd like to do is move from the bottom of the chart up. And I am confident that with the funding partners that we already have and additional funding partners and mechanisms for funding, that with all of us working together for the common goal, that we can do something about this and move back up that chart. So if we had, and this is an example, if we had the additional $5 million to go towards our operations, we would be able to maintain the service we have today before any cuts. So maintain the service we have today through 2023. This does not allow for any growth. This does not allow for any matching of, let's say, federal grants, discretionary grants, so we could leverage more money. But what it does is it sort of fills the gap between now and 2023. So the green bars on here are operating revenues we bring in. The yellow is what we're taking away from our reserves, and the blue is the $5 million we would get each and every year. As you can see, as we go out the chart, as we go out to 24 and 25, we need to be able to find other funding sources that are more significant. This allows us some time, if we got $5 million a year, to be very strategic in what we're doing and really plan out thoroughly what the next steps will be. Now, the types of funding that are out there, what I would like to see is something that is flexible. What I mean by that is something I can use for operating or capital, as the case may be. If it's for operations, it can allow us to not only maintain our service, but perhaps grow our service if we had enough. As I mentioned, we can start to leverage that towards additional federal funding. Oftentimes we get grant applications that requires a cash match, and I would love to be able to do that. Matter of fact, even on an operating side, we have FDOT that has approached us for funding from downtown St. Pete to the Tampa airport. It's a 50-50 split, which means I have to match at 50%. I don't have the money to do that in all good conscience, so we're turning down the grant unless we get funding elsewhere. So we can also supplement our capital reserve funded projects, and we'll shift those monies around if need be. And some examples we thought of flexible funding is our gas tax, a transportation surtax, our county general funds, and of course our PSTA reserves right now we can use either towards capital or operating. You hear me talk, and I know Mr. Albritton, you haven't heard me talk about it, but it's very important in my mind that when we use our reserves, we don't use it for one-time expenditures. Just like at home, if you're going to spend a lot of money, you want to put it into something you're going to enjoy for years to come. So I like to use our PSTA reserves towards capital. Plus, it allows us to do some innovative things that have saved us money. But funding for capital, if we got funding for capital, and capital only, you know, it could help us meet our vehicle and major project needs. I've listed up here some of our major things that are currently going on. We have our rapid transit service, which is the Central Ave BRT as it's been called in the past. Currently in our current budget's at $5 million that PSTA is putting into that. We have about $4.4 million programmed to buy buses out of our own money, as well as money for the hybrid replacement component parts. And that was strategic on our part to do that. It's going to help us save a lot of money. We did that with engines and transmissions and saved about $750,000. We also have money in there for electric buses. So as I mentioned, it's very important as we look at this, to me, that if we use our reserves, I'd rather use it for capital than operations. We also have a lot of unfunded needs that we don't even have on the chart yet. We'd love to buy more electric buses if possible, and the more buses we buy that are electric, we're going to need some facility charging infrastructure to be able to handle that demand. In addition, we are in the process of designing the Clearwater Intermodal Station, but we have no money for construction. We also have resiliency improvements we'd like to do to this facility. Our electric is not where it should be in the event of a flood, so we want to work on things like that. Coming up is going to be the replacement of our real-time system. That could be upwards of about $10 million, perhaps even more. The infrastructure that is out there, as far as how it runs, will no longer be supported in a few years, and we need to start planning for that. That's been a big discussion at staff level to include in this next 5-year plan. And of course, if we had money, we'd love to expand our fleet to expand service. So if we had money above and beyond what we needed for today's operations of our service, we would love to be able to have some regional lines out there. We would love to have more rapid transit services on our main corridors. We'd love to bring people from Tampa Airport to downtown St. Pete and back, and of course to Clearwater Beach. So these projects may also require capital as well, just like our BRT does. So this is sort of an overview of where we are at. We've done, I think, everything we can, and we still continue to try to raise more revenue, to do more cut operating costs. But what we really need is some sort of funding source to get us through at least the next couple years and beyond. We want to grow and not just stay stagnant. So with that, I'll open it up for questions. Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I've gathered by listening to the transportation meetings that we've had, really the best way to raise the kind of money we need to have moving forward is through a referendum of some type for a sales tax. But can this gas tax help us in the interim? Is that going to be enough?
The gas tax will raise approximately $17 million for the county. You know, again, I'm not specifying which source $5 million would come from, but if that source were to come from the gas tax, I could use it for capital or operations, so it would be at least a flexible funding source.
Right now, the gas tax is shared with the cities, so we'd have to, we could raise the gas tax at our next meeting if we wanted to, but we have to work out the interlocal agreement.
Right.
But
Yeah. You want to go back to the
Yeah, I was going to say,
slide?
yeah.
So the reason, at the last PSTA board meeting, you'll recall, there was some discussion about either the cities that don't pay into PSTA now and that $4 million that they could generate for us if they somehow joined, or gas tax or some other exotic sources of funds. And there was, some of the board members said, well, lots of those things don't really solve the problem for the long haul. They don't really advance us in any kind of major way. They kind of are just stopgap or Band-Aid kind of things. So what should we even bother? That's what which we're trying to make a show with this slide, is that perhaps, I think you're right, Mr. Albritton, that in order, you know, really the only solution that we've identified to actually move us substantially forward to getting a transit system the size that our county deserves is probably some sort of ballot initiative. But I don't think anybody on the PSTA board, I don't think anyone on the staff want to reduce the already very, very low service we have today. And so the blue revenue there is trying to sort of say, yes, I mean, it would be my recommendation, and it's really up to the county, but we do look at a stopgap solution of some sort. I picked 5 million to show on this slide. We're gonna make this multicolored slide for a couple other scenarios, like no additional revenue, and then showing how the cuts, which are red, would take place, or the full gas tax. I guess we do that scenario, 17 million. But what the 5 million kind of represents is the 5 cents that Pinellas County does not levy on the gas tax that all of the surrounding counties do already. generates $17 million a year. Historically,
Which the county and the cities use for transportation needs, like fixing roads and things like
right.
that.
The existing gas tax is goes 100% to road improvements, maintenance, sidewalks. None of it goes to transit. It is split 60-40. 60% is retained by the county, and then 40% is given to all the different cities, I think based on population, in Pinellas County. If you take the 17 million additional, and I think it generates 25 some million dollars a year, the current. If you take the additional 17 million and you do the same 60-40 split, so the cities still get 40% of the new revenue, that leaves $10 million. The presentation that the county made about their transportation fund is that they go into the red in about the same time period that PSTA goes into the red. So I just came up with this idea that, well, let's just split. The cities get their 7 million, and then you split the remaining 10 million 50-50 for the county and PSTA. That would be $5 million. I mean, that's one scenario. That's not what other folks have suggested.
Well, and it's possible that we could work out a different scenario with the cities if they saw the benefit of giving more of it to the PSTA.
Right. Right. It's not set in stone that they have to get the same 60-40 split, but
But it will take a while to negotiate that.
right. And then so this would just buy us some time to I don't know. Yeah, either
Right.
have those discussions or work out and not have to eliminate the service this year, this June.
Right. Well, okay, so the service reductions is what I was trying to ask the other day when we talked about this. The service reductions will save us $1.7 million next year, right? If we make them.
No, our service reductions, because right now the routes that we've been talking about are lower performing routes. They are not like the lowest performing route that we eliminated, was it a year or so ago, the 444. I think it's gonna save us around more like $800,000. So it's not a huge amount. I mean, not that 800,000 isn't exciting. I get excited over $10,000, but it's not significant enough to really move us on this chart.
Right.
So, I mean, it's an option
What's an option?
to cut service. I don't know that it's the best option.
Right. Well, Bob just said $1.7 million.
Well, that's our deficit this year that we're trying to get to.
In
But right now, we
19?
think it's, for this fiscal year, we have a deficit.
So you can see
1.7.
you see the very first.
Yes, I
right.
got that.
There's the total bar is $82 million. Only the revenue, which is green, only gets $80 million. So there's a $1.7 million use of reserves already, right now. We're already tapping into reserves to float the operations. So originally we
The numbers are coming from. Okay.
Originally, we did try to come up with a list of routes to eliminate to totally save the $1.7 million. But the fact of the matter is that gets into some pretty high ridership routes, some pretty significant cuts. And so we put together a list of our lowest performing 5 routes, and that we're estimating that will save us $800K. Hopefully it'll save us even more than that, but that's a conservative estimate about what it would save. So that would probably mean that if no additional revenue was identified, we will be back at the table cutting again.
So,
So this is in FY19.
Yeah.
Right, and the cuts right now, Brad, are slated for June if we went ahead with them.
So
Yes.
all right, so if you're cutting routes, how does the operating revenue go up every year? As I'm looking on here, the green.
Now, this, all of our items are based on key assumptions, which are in your package, but what's driving a lot of that is the property tax that is going up and the revenue side. We've left fares flat, but the biggest piece of it is your grant funding tends to go up a little bit every year, and then your property taxes.
Property taxes, state funding is going up by a couple percentage per year. I mean, as
So
you see,
does this also represent what the costs are gonna be by
Yes.
Yes.
2025? Why, it's going from 82 to 122 in
Included.
6 years?
Included in here on the yellow bars are is anticipation of use of our reserves, which includes the use of reserves for capital.
Right.
So it's the operating needs plus that capital needs that are currently PSTA funded.
yeah, so, but you're right,
That's quite an increase.
total
That's-
operating expense,
That's a 50% increase in 6 years.
We also
that's
are.
about our trend, I think Mike Hansen would say.
And
About
it also-
8 or 9% a year?
And that includes our increased service for the RTS. Starting in 2021, 22?
Sorry,
Somewhere
say-
there, so that's part of it, but not a big part. 21.
I mean.
But you can see in those yellow bars, that's where the $4.4 million towards the 24 and 25, between those 2 years, about 2.2 or 2.1 million each year if we're going towards buses.
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
the 2024 column, see how the 2024 and 2025 take a significant jump from the $101 million budget in 2023?
Yes, that was what I was saying.
Debbie is
Yeah.
explaining that is because the yellow section of that bar, which is the reserve use, jumps up a lot. And that's because it includes buses purchased with our reserves in addition to the operating cost.
I'm just asking why the costs are going up so rapidly.
And that's
Right.
included in it.
I think we need to modify the graph because that's misleading. Or that's, they're not going up, it's not going up that much. It will.
So we can take out the PSTA portion of our capital.
Well,
See, down at the bottom, we have
well,
reserves.
it's kind of confusing that we also have the service reductions and their costs are going up and we have.
Yeah, we don't
I
have,
think that's
and
what you were
this
saying.
assumes there's no service reductions in here. This assumes that we're maintaining the service we have today.
This graph, yeah, this does not assume, this assumes we
Well, what does the
forego
red
the
mean?
cuts.
The red means at this point, we would either have to have some major source of revenue, or we would have to cut at that point in time. Because we don't have enough revenue, even with the $5 million, to maintain our operations.
But the costs go up very sharply in those 2 years. So that's kind of,
I think you'll
I
see
mean, I
that
guess-
change if I take out the capital. It'll come more in a nicer
Even.
sweep.
Because I think the paper handout is more even. I don't know.
Okay, so I got another question.
No, this is
Yeah.
fine.
This is
Kind of
good.
veering off just a little bit, but it has to do with the graphs. I know that y'all really love the electric buses, and they're really, really expensive. So if you're putting more of them online, it's a lot more money than, let's say, a natural gas or, propane
Yeah.
gas bus. So is that a staff?
not necessarily.
No,
right? We haven't even looked at natural gas.
no.
Well, they are more expensive than a regular diesel bus.
Yeah, I know, but they're not as expensive as the kind of electric. And I know I saw the report last time that we were getting a pretty good kick from, federal
Yes.
Right.
help
Yes.
with that.
Right.
And if I can understand if that's the reason you're going that way, because you're gonna get that balance in there.
But the maintenance is also much lower. Over time, over that
Right.
15 years. or
Right
20
now,
years that
Debbie,
we're
right?
gonna have the bus.
There's no money, there's no PSDA reserve funds set aside or
Fuel
planned in the
maintenance
capital
over
program
the
for electric
lifespan of the
vehicles.
bus.
Well, it
That's
didn't
correct. I
show me
do have money set aside
battery
for
life, but then
buses.
he cleared it up and said
4.4 million
25-year
down the road,
battery.
those years.
Amazing.
So,
No specified
Mr.
time.
Albritton, just to confirm that you're right. The buses, the electric vehicles that we just bought, the board approved last month, we put in the amount for a standard diesel bus, and then we got a federal grant that allows us to upgrade it to an electric vehicle. So it really doesn't cost us any more than a standard bus, but we get an electric vehicle.
But if we could convert the entire fleet right now to electric, we'd be saving
A lot of money.
on
Yeah,
fuel and
the
maintenance.
long-term operating expense of the electric bus is
But-
estimated to save quite a bit of funds, but the upfront capital is more, but we're able to, so far, we've been able to get those federal grants to avoid that, and that is the assumption moving forward, in this graph at least, that's the way we would buy electric vehicles, only when we got federal grants that could pay the upcharge to make them electric.
And they keep coming down in price, which is good, so the cost of an electric vehicle compared to one of our hybrid vehicles is very close now. And the batteries, the way we have the contract written is those batteries are warranted for the life of the bus. Which is,
Right, I
which
was
is-
amazed to hear that. They lasted so long.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to think how it would be better to present this information if you're trying to sell.
Yes, that's what the purpose of, this is our dry run.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know, but
Uh,
this is not convincing me. I mean, I don't need to be convinced, but other people do.
Yes, now, next week, I have my next meeting with, the county administrator, Barry Burton, and Wood Blanton from Ford Pinellas, and we're kind of putting, we each have our own responsibilities. Ford Pinellas is putting together a plan to present to the county administrator and to Ford Pinellas as part of the Advantage Plan on key priority corridors, and then essentially how if additional revenue is expanded, the sequence of how we might expand across the county, and then PSTA's responsibility is to look at all these, kind of do a complete due diligence on all these various options, the non-member cities, the operating versus capital, state legislative changes, things like that. So I'm going to be reporting that to them, and then I think, and the county's responsibility, at least, I think the county has agreed, I don't know if it's been set yet, is to have a follow-up discussion. I think now,
I
which
don't
is
know when yet, but.
hopefully by the end of April. And it's my goal also, we're trying to schedule meetings with the 3 non-PSTA county commissioners. Because the 4 county commissioners are now, hopefully are going, seeing this, 18 times, but the 3 others, Commissioner Seal, Commissioner Peters, and Commissioner Welch, we want to present this stuff
And you know
to.
Welch is on.
Yeah, we've met with him already once.
Yeah, so, but I guess, well, and you know that Barry wants somehow for land use and,
Workforce
future
development.
growth and transportation and all that to get economic growth.
Yeah.
So I would be hammering on the Brian Dairy route, because that is supposed to be, and as a matter of fact, you have it in your, what was that, 2020 plan? No, whatever that plan was.
Community bus plan?
The what? Yeah, but yes,
Community bus plan?
but that's where all the jobs are gonna be.
Yeah.
I would hammer on that one, for support. You're talking about cutting that one. Even if it's not a highly used route right now, it could be that we can stimulate that job growth by not cutting that and, so with some help from our friends. You know what I mean?
Okay, yeah.
Because I think WIT's probably on the same sort of area with transit-oriented development and all that, So, anyway. So transit-oriented development. I would rather see this with what's happening, just unaugmented, what's happening with your budget, what's gonna happen with your budget. I mean, I know, but they don't necessarily know
Right.
why it's a huge crisis. It's because the reserves and the red part really is confusing, I think. It makes it look like your costs are going crazy when maybe they're not, but.
I think we'll, no offense, Brad, but we'll maybe look at the scaling on this as far as starting at 75 versus 0. That might help to give it a little different perspective. You can take out the use of the capital piece at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
But
your
the service
input's
reduction
great.
thing is confusing for me. I don't know what that means.
It means if we don't get money, we have to cut service.
Well, okay.
That's a simple, sorry.
Yeah, but maybe have that on a, maybe a separate, because I kind of agree. I mean, I like to look, I'm looking at something going, how much you're gonna need as time goes on, and there's some things in there that, I mean, when I first look at it, it looks like there's a big jump.
Yeah.
So maybe make it,
And you don't have the 5 million yet, so, yeah.
So
You're trying to show the need for the 5 million
Right,
and
so-
what that could do for how long it could do
So
something.
status quo is 1.
Going forward 5 or 6 years. And then what would happen if you had 5 million, kind of in a separate line or something? And how much of that, I don't know how, I'm not a graphics person, but
That's why I've got Michael next.
okay, good. You can figure out how to say this. So I mean, we know the 5 million is not gonna help necessarily expand services.
Right, it just only keeps it.
It's gonna keep
the
it
same
status
level.
quo
Yeah.
over the
We're
next
trying
5
to
or 6
maintain what
years.
we got,
Right.
yeah. While we
Um,
work out a longer-term solution. I mean,
Right.
it is essentially kind of like a Band-Aid.
Well, I think it's important to say that, just like that.
well, I mean, I liked your, I guess it was with you that I was talking about, maybe the plan to do this would be before we get before we go for the sales tax thing, do some gas tax hike or whatever, and you gotta show that you're improving, so you can go to the public to say, this is what we can do, this is what we've done, and show the improvements you've done and the things that I mean, you have a lot of neat programs, but use that, because you're gonna need the public to love what you're doing, so,
I know.
I mean, if you're going in for that vote.
The other thing that would help the public love what you're doing is to help them understand what you're doing and how much is available to them, because I've talked to people who go on the website and they can't figure out for beans what kind of programs are available to them.
I know.
You know,
Including in my
I mean,
own home.
I know it costs money to do that, but you have so many innovative things going on that wouldn't it be great if you could just go on there, plug in your circumstances and where you want to go, and it would say, okay, you're eligible for this, and you're not eligible for this, but, you can go down here, take the 22 to the whatever, or you could do an Uber ride for, a few
To
bucks.
get you, to get
Yeah,
you to
but people don't even know about the Direct Connect, I swear.
You're right.
But that's beside the
You're right.
point. So the other thing you could do in the sales pitch is to say, okay, if we had $5 million through, let's say 24, 25, and we actually got a sales tax, we'll give you back your $5 million.
Yeah. Like witness.
Once we get the big win, we'll give you back the $5 million, but we need help right now.
Yeah.
Right?
I think Commissioner Long even suggested, because I think I don't know exactly the county, she describes as the county commission did something for the construction licensing board that was, she described as a
It's a
loan.
bridge loan.
A
Yeah.
bridge loan.
Actually, I don't think we did. They asked us for it and then they didn't need it, so.
Okay. I guess the county administrator asked, well, would PSTA be in a position to pay back the loan?
Well, exactly, that's the problem.
Debbie said
Yeah.
no.
It was a very short conversation.
Not unless you've got another.
Unless
I mean, if you
something
got
else
the-
happened.
If you got the sales tax, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the sales tax would enable you to do the expanding you've been talking about for years around
Yeah.
the north
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happened in Hillsborough. Hillsborough's
Right.
on their way to be a 3 times expansion.
Yes.
See, I
Yeah.
think between you and Witt and Barry, you could put together a hell of a, or even just with Cassandra, you could put together a plan quickly about what if we had that kind of 1 cent sales tax? What could we be doing? What could it look like in 10 years? You know, 10 years is no time, but that's time is money. That's what I would be doing before we even, you almost have to make the same pitch to Barry and the county commission that you do to the public. It's like, you know, almost. Although he has us tell him that you have a problem.
Yeah.
You know. But I like the short-term sort of propping up until we find something else. Short-term meaning 4, 5, or 6 years.
Yeah.
So I would make sure that's clear.
Well, that's good to hear,
Yeah.
because at the board meeting, there was some comments about the non-member cities. Well, that's,
Well, I do think that's kind of counterproductive to put that on the ballot and then 2, 3 years later, put a sales tax on the ballot,
yeah.
you know? And then they're gonna be saying, what are you doing with all this money we're giving you? Like it was a lot of money.
So you have to look at the whole thing, you gotta strategically
Yeah.
plan the whole thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, the gas
Let's not
tax
shoot ourselves
does not
in
need
the
to go to
foot.
the ballot. It would just go to
That
the
would
county
just be,
commission.
yeah.
It wouldn't go to the citizens.
And we should do it while it's, but the problem is, we need some of that money for our transportation needs. So
Right.
I don't know whether $5 million is available a year or not. Actually, I missed the transportation summit, so I should look at that packet. But maybe it is, and that's something we could accomplish pretty quickly without, with pretty much being under the radar. You know. But you're still gonna have to have a plan, because Barry's not gonna do it without.
The plan.
Without transit-oriented development. You know, how is this gonna help my employment centers and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's why I'm very thankful for Sarah and Witt
Yes, yes.
working on all that stuff.
We're working on
So, I mean, I think there's a plan. Now we just need to look at the bigger plan.
Yeah.
Unless Brandis and DeSigley get their way, and we can't ever put anything on the ballot without getting 2/3 vote on it.
I know.
it. Do it now.
You know, can we do it tomorrow?
Yeah,
Yeah,
hopefully,
that's just mean.
I don't know.
Get it.
Every day that the legislature is in session,
I know, it's dangerous.
it's dangerous.
So, okay. I don't know if that helped any, but.
No,
It
that
was
actually
helpful.
very helpful.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know, we'll work on this and do one with no funding, and then we can see where we land.
I almost put a shadow thing in the back of what could we do, but that you're still gonna have a cliff. You know.
It's a challenge.
Well, yeah,
And a rainbow, where do you get the sales tax?
that was the other thing to do, make it into these bars so there's no more a cliff.
Yeah.
I mean.
Cliffs are dramatic, you know. Oh,
Yeah.
Love
okay,
those
what
gra-
else?
A lot of those graph programs, you can show it a lot of different ways with the
Yeah.
same data, you know,
Yeah.
whichever
I know, it's just the way
makes
it's.
it feel better, to get the message across, so.
The
Yeah.
service reduction thing confuses me. How can that be part of the cost?
Maybe would it
If
read
it's a
better if we
reduction.
called it additional revenue?
What, the service reduction?
Right.
Well,
I mean,
the
that's what we're
idea.
striving for.
Now, I think that the overall size of that 24, 25 bar are
Exactly.
too high, but
Yeah.
ignoring that, the idea is we could afford, if we got the 5 million, we could afford a budget that goes up to the blue line
Mhm.
there, 105 million or so.
Okay.
We just, the cost growth is, we're estimating it's, to keep the service running, we're gonna need 114 million, but we can only afford 105 or so, whatever that number is there. And then, so the
Well,
rest. we'd
actually,
have
I
to-
think that's a fairly dramatic chart. If you take off the service reductions, how much of that is coming out of your reserve? Increasingly, well, and I'm sure it would be even more dramatic if the 5 million wasn't in there. So,
Right,
you know,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, you have to make that point first, and then think about
We
the
end
other
up
one.
in 2020.
Okay.
And how, you know, we have a system now that's inadequate, and it's not gonna get any better until we get a large amount of money. We can keep it at this, so you wanna graphically depict that we can keep it at where it is with $5 million a year, but we can't grow it at all. It's not gonna grow. In fact, it might start shrinking again a little bit,
And the other issue that,
but it has to grow, because we're an urban area and we're just,
a growing urban area. The other issue that kind of came up at the last board meeting a little bit, and that we're maybe not doing a very good job of showing on this graph, but PSTA does have a substantial amount of built-up reserves.
right.
So, if you say like we're as poor, I mean, not really, when we have $20+ million, well, even more than that, we've got a lot of money sitting in the bank that's been through savings over the previous years. So, my thought is that it is appropriate to spend down some of those previous savings, so we don't have such an enormous cash reserve while we're cutting service. You know, we would need to cut service even more, but that doesn't seem very nice to the, or appropriate for the customers to suffer when we have all this money and just hoarding the money.
Right.
So that's what I wanted to kind of create a yellow, a metered out use of the reserves.
Yeah, but see, when you say that, then the person you're asking for money says, why are you have all that money in reserve, what are you asking me for $5 million?
Well, the other 18 slides in Debbie's PowerPoint, it showed that the reserves really should not be used for operations.
Absolutely. But
That they really
I
should be
agree.
used for capital. So, no, I know, I mean, I know that's what.
So this is operating, okay. Yeah, it would be good to have both budgets, not all together, but, because this is all
Okay.
operating.
Yeah, it's supposed to be.
And capital, and there's some capital, using the capital reserve in the yellow
Okay.
bars here.
But the reserves you're hoping to use for capital.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You have to have a reason why you're not spending your own reserves instead of asking for somebody else. to
Right,
have the
and
money.
part of our reserves, like right now, 5 million of it, going back to where are our reserves, oops, there it is. Right now, out of the money that Brad's talking about, we've got programmed 5 million for the rapid
Oh, for-
transit.
yeah.
Money for the buses, of course, we keep getting successful in getting additional discretionary funding or finding other ways of getting more buses at less cost, that helps reduce that number. So I know the planning group applies for everything. And then our hybrid replacement component parts,
Yeah.
and then see, we're able to match, which is a
Right.
good thing because we had the money. So I always keep
Okay.
wishing, I tell Brad all the time, I'm waiting for a nice investor to come up and say, Debbie, I will take care of that $5 million for you for the BRT. And I said, I will write their names across every single bus
We'll
that we
put it on
buy.
every bus, yeah. Yes, that would be nice.
And I think to myself, well, okay, that's great, but that's not gonna fund operations. That's a Band-Aid.
Correct. It is.
Yeah.
But I still want it to happen. It's okay to dream, Brad.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you for being
All
our
right.
focus group.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
sure.
like that.
Well, good luck. You're meeting next week?
Yeah.
Next Tuesday, the day before the PSTA board meeting.
Oh.
So maybe the PowerPoint will be scrapped.
Oh,
When you see it at the board meeting, I don't know.
We'll come up with some unique way of showing this with your input, which was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, just down and dirty. This is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I know that the county administrator, and he's right, he wants a comprehensive plan that includes land use and workforce development and everything like that.
Well, because otherwise, it's a black hole. It's, so he asked me for $5 million this year, and then next year it's 6 or 8 or 10,
I know.
because you could use half our budget to build your bus system, but we can't give it to you. So I think he wants some assurance that this is a stopgap measure, that, it's not gonna be, and that it's gonna be something that will get the county where it wants to go as well.
Right.
You know.
And that's what's appropriate.
Yeah.
And then that's also
Yeah.
what the citizens will want, some
Yeah,
kind
for
of
sure.
comprehensive thing. Yeah.
I mean, the people that need these buses are the ones that also need jobs. Or need to be able to keep their jobs, and
Right.
need better jobs. Yeah. So,
Okay.
there is a way to tie it all together. I mean, I like his idea of having certain routes, core. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
That can make sense from a workforce development and affordable housing and transportation.
Well, when you think about that whole corridor over there, that Ryan Dairy, that could be, you could put a lot of housing over there and be feeding all those jobs that are there. There are a lot of jobs there now. but
I know there are. I mean, I've always wondered ever since I moved here why we don't get better ridership on that route, and I think it is
I
because
know.
the route doesn't have any residential.
Exactly.
There's nobody for
Yeah.
people to get on.
Well, not only that, but when did you ever go to any place back in there? I mean, you could drive
Kinda far.
half a mile off the road.
It's a far walk
to get back on some of
from-
those complexes
Yeah.
back there.
True.
It's like,
It's
you
not very
almost need a
transit
little
oriented.
trolley system running around the industrial parks there.
Plus, there's no sidewalk on part of it.
Is there not? Oh, God, that's bad.
I think in front of those big call centers on the across from Business St. Pete Clearwater,
Huh.
there's a sidewalk on that side.
Okay.
Might be wrong, but.
Well, something to think about. So, okay.
Next meeting, April 17th
Oh.
at 10:30?
What kind of day is that?
Yep, that's the regular time.
Okay.
10:30.
We bounce around a lot. Okay.
I know.
I think I'll be here. I have to be over in Tampa early. Should be here sometime.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah,
So-
you
We'll
do.
see you next week.
We need to be.
You just kind of met.
Okay.